Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show we're talking about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Reacher Season 2, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of the last episode, now that the only other loose end they had, the sniper from the cemetery situation from Franz's funeral, is now dead, and it could be Swan. It's looking more and more like Swan because, hey, the person who paid them was Swan. But I brought it up last episode what most likely could be the case, because at no point did they actually get a description. The guy just said, hey, my name is Tony Swan. So it could easily just been someone faking his identity, because at no point did they ever get a description from Tony about Tony. That was my point last episode. So this episode kind of ends up confirming that belief, but they were kind of still... Reacher doesn't fully want to commit to being like, no, definitely Tony's behind this. So they are going to ultimately try and track down Marlo because I forgot what it was. I think they had tracked her down. I forgot how they necessarily did. I know how they do it later on as Neely, playing the daughter was able to kind of track her IP address from like her switch, but I don't remember how they initially got to Marlo and Jane through like this. I know they went to a convenience store, but I forgot why they checked it out in the first place. And I love the guy's like, oh, you can like scooch in a little bit, and Reacher was like, yeah, she doesn't scooch, because the guy was like severely he's like, oh, Neely, like you can scooch in and like if you want to get a closer look at the camera. And even when like the camera wasn't focused on him, you could see him in the background staring at Neely and smiling. It's like he's spitting. I'm like, hey, I don't blame you, son. Neely's a very beautiful woman, but she makes it kind of perfectly clear she doesn't really kind of mess with anybody. It's like, yeah, so I don't know if she described herself as asexual or not, but it seems like that kind of might be her jam of like she's not really into people. So, which also plays into something that kind of comes up in the end of the episode, but we'll get to that when we get to it, because it's something I've noticed about Neely before. There's been hints to it, and this season kind of like really leans into certain aspects of her personality. But like I said, I'll talk about that later. But they had to try and track down Jane. It's like, right, I could, go through her, all I have to do is like play some games until she gets online, yada, 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 so forth. Which led to some fun time, some sexy time between Dixon and Reacher. And just that entire scene, I was like, God damn. It's like, I won't lie to you, I literally audibly said, God damn, the moment Surrender Swan took off her clothes. That is a very, 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 very beautiful woman. But nevertheless, there's a whole situation with, like Reacher and her, like, I love the whole line of like, yeah, I know your whole thing is like rest when you can, and he was like, yeah, that's not a firm rule. It's like, I'm not about to miss out on this opportunity, but it does eventually lead to him having a memory about their last case together, which all of that was one final case, the drugs and everything, because their operation got shut down because a colonel is about to get promoted. He's been working hard, stellar career for 20 years, but that's going to be staying with this whole drug stuff because it's going to be like, oh, you're this person. How did you not know all this was happening under your own purview? So the operation got shut down. These like smaller, like, oh, this person's going to be convicted. This person's going to be put in a brig. It's like slaps on the wrist, basically. So Reacher just describes it as like our last case basically ending up in shit, and he feels like this situation will be that same. And when it comes down to it, will I have it in me to put Swan down? Because I didn't talk about it, but Neely had asked him last episode. He's like, right, I'm going to do to Swan that I did to that sniper. I'm going to put my hands around his throat and squeeze until he tells me what. And then Neely was like, afterwards? And Reacher never gave her an answer. And we're in that same boat again. And Dixon's like, you've done so much for us. You trained all of us. You've been there for all of us in that regard. So you don't have to carry that. I'll be the one that puts Tony down. But I'm curious how that case situation worked out, because he said it went to shit. Now, Reacher was told to back down because he has to follow orders. I mean, that's the military. You might not always like the orders you're given, but it's your orders. You follow them regardless. That's why the chain of command is what it is. You might not, like I said, might not like it, but it is what it is. So the question then becomes, was that the end of it, or did Reacher go behind that colonel's back and it kind of stained, the 110 might not have fallen out just because of this case? It might have been the way Reacher approached it basically led to the 110th getting, like, because I thought my thinking was maybe the moment Reacher like retired from the retired from the army, or so did they. Like, because once again, this was their last case together. So I thought maybe they discharged and the team broke up and disbanded that way. But it probably wasn't on good terms. It's probably they win again. Maybe it was specifically Reacher's decision. Maybe he made that unilateral decision without the rest of the team involved, and it cost them their position. But it's like, no, we're not going to let this BS slide. We're not going to be told to back down from a case. We are doing our jobs, and we're making sure that things go through. And I could easily see Fields coming to rip them a new one. So I think that's going to be how that situation ends. So that might be how the 1/10 came to an end, is because maybe it wasn't them entirely, and maybe the others, like maybe Reacher did it, but the rest of the team is like, no, we co-signed what Reacher did. Like, what you asked him to do was some bullshit. I don't know. Maybe that could be extra reason why Reacher like feels a little bad about the 1/10 situation, because maybe how he handled it was a unilateral thing. As the leader, he made a decision without backing up the rest of the team. Or, like I said, I feel like the team are very ride or die with each other, but especially for Reacher, so they would definitely probably back his place. So I'm curious to see how that goes, but I think that's probably how the 1/10 came to an end. Not just like, I mean, it could easily just be on the flip side, just be like Reacher did do this and he just couldn't stand it anymore, of like the bureaucracy of it, the bullshit of it all, and that's when he retired and the rest of the team kind of followed suit. Like, that could be it, but I'm assuming it's just going to be like they kind of like got disbanded in a shit cloud that was them catching flack for how they handled it. So we'll see. At the same time, like, they were doing all that, trying to track down Marlowe, they ended up Russo ended up confronting Marsh, which saw that coming, because it's like, yeah, you're one of the two people. Once again, they didn't show his lieutenant for a couple episodes, but distinctly, he was reporting to his lieutenant about Reacher and his squad. So I was like, right, he's the only people you would know, because that's why Reacher even said, like, whoever you told about this, and there was only one other person he most likely would talk to, is his lieutenant, because that's the only person he reports to. And so his lieutenant hasn't always been a dirty cop. It seems like this investigation, Langston got to him and was like, yo, here's a truck full of money, and backed it up and was like, all you have to do at first is just tell me how the investigation's going. He didn't co-sign the whole like sending hitmen and shooters and all that shit. It's like, but you are still responsible for it. Because he's like, because Russo's comparing this to the 9/11 thing of like, you are supposed to be a certain cop. Like, you know what happened to this city, And he was like, yeah, I've lost more friends in 9/11 than you would have in your entire life. Because Russo's coming from this perspective, because I don't know how much he's told Marsh about AM. And yes, AM is like a known terrorist. And so there could be like, hey, he's like, fine, you want to like justify it, be like, yeah, these guys are dirty cops, so you're just gonna be like, hey, they're dirty cops. It's nothing of that like magnitude, but it's like the person they're involved with is of that magnitude. So are you willing, really, or can you say months from now, when something happens in Chicago or something happens in New York again, can you look yourself in the face and be like, oh, like it wasn't that big of a deal? Because yes, he's like, I know Langston, I've known Langstons, I know like type of people they are. They're not going to get mixed up in something that they're going to find something that's going to make them some money. It's like, yeah, but what if working with some very bad people gets you some money? It's going to be enough money that is going to, people who have no conscience already, who are already willing to cross that line at such a low level, you add up that money to a large enough amount, you will sell your soul for it. I mean, specifically corrupt people like a Langston, dirty cops like him and his buddies. Yeah, like there's a large enough amount of money that you will look away and not feel a damn thing about whatever casualties or terrible thing goes down because of your actions now, and the person you sold all this to, AM, is into some fucked up shit. I mean, hell, we catch up with AM a little bit this episode. He ends up killing a cop who, because he's in Pennsylvania. Once again, it's always interesting when you finding out rules about. Apparently, in Pennsylvania, you can't have anything dangling from your mirror in your car, which I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, from a certain perspective, I get it, because it could be seen as a distraction. Like, it could be a distracting thing, I guess. I don't know if that's supposed to be like, oh, it could be a distracting thing for. I would assume you as a driver, it's supposed to be. Maybe that's the reasoning they do that, or maybe it's like, oh, it could lead to like, maybe if it's hanging there, it's something that could mess up and fall and get caught behind, like, mess up you trying to brake or something like that. I mean, maybe that's the justification. I mean, there's multiple ways that you could probably interpret that to be like why it's a law. But yeah, that cop just was going to run his plates. She was like, he was so close to be like, oh, can you let me off without a ticket? She's like, fine. But it's still a warning still has to be written down. So I just got to run your plates. Oh, here's your name. I'm gonna run your plates and stuff. And by the time the message gets back about him being someone to watch out for and being dangerous, he's already killed her, which is such a shame. So yeah, those are the type of people Marsh is in bed with, and with the end of this episode, he's gonna look like a right piece of shit. And you hope on everything he feels bad, because he seems like he has a conscience enough of like, yeah, I'm getting paid because I know what this situation is. If I don't play, because it's not a suggestion of whether you play ball or not. It's like, no, you're going to play ball. So it's kind of that type of situation of like, you do whatever you got to survive. But it's like, because you didn't have any balls, Russo did. You're not a good cop. You don't even deserve the badge. Russo does. It's that type of situation. So, but yeah, the squad eventually tracks down Marlo. And I love that Chad guy. And because she had said, like, made this lie that she was getting away from an abusive boyfriend, and he immediately saw Reacher and thought that was him. I mean, he's like, oh, big guy, 300 pounds. He's like, what? Oh, like, she lied to you? Okay, Chad, you're going to tell Marlo to come in here. It's like, no, I'm not going to. And you're like, oh, Chad, if you were any other circumstance, I'm like, good on you, Chad. And then, like, Reacher made a homemade silencer. I was like, interesting. He's like, cool. I will shoot you in the leg, and if you scream, I will shoot you in the head. Get Marlo. He's like, okay. Tell him to sit back down. He's like, I can't believe he fell for that. It's like 16 inches of plastic. And like O'Donnell and Dixon are laughing at him too. And they bring Marlo in, and we get the full story. So she's not a bad person. She didn't know what she was sending Dixon and Neely towards. It's just a thing of she just followed orders because she was told by Langston to kind of give them that address. Like, she didn't know what was waiting for them because she wasn't fully aware of everything that was going on. It turns out Tony's the one that kind of brought her into this because she's like, I'm the one that hired Tony because she knew who Langston was. It's like, right, him and his cop buddies are from the same precinct. It's incestuous. Like, it's just he hires in his buddies, and like, you needed an outside person to kind of keep everything in line, and that's where Tony came into play. And so Reacher feels reconfirmed when he was like, yeah, some of us didn't believe in him. It's like, just he's the only one that kept faith in Tony. You know, O'Donnell was quick to be like, yeah, but what if he was the one that was the most. Dixon and Neely were open to the possibility of him being dirty. They didn't quite go that way, but it seemed possible. Like I said, even when Neely brought it up last episode of like, oh yeah, like he co-signed some stuff. It's like, no, like he signed off on some stuff. It's like, most likely not. It's most likely someone just using his identity or whatever. Well, they even kind of hinted that maybe Swan is still alive because of they think he co-signed off of last episode, the shipment of those devices, but those chips. No, it wasn't. Was it the chips themselves or the? No. I think they already have the chips. It was the. I can't remember. No. It was the chips because they already had the missiles. I'm probably getting those details backwards, but either way, I mean, once again, they have everything they need now, basically. But Tony was supposed to be the one who Swan's the one who was supposedly the one who like signed off on it. And it's like the question last episode was, well, did he actually sign off of it with someone like using his biometrics, yada yada yada? Is that what they're keeping him alive for? Because they need him to be alive because they need him to be their fall guy. Most likely, what they're gonna do is most likely kill him and make it seem like, oh, like he was backed into a corner. He was so riddled with guilt, he killed himself, and oh, this is all. It's all closed. That's going to be probably the justification for it, but. Or just like how they're going to like model this whole situation after. But yeah, basically they made so many chips seem like they weren't operational when in fact they were. Made them seem like they were defected, and those are the ones that ended up getting obviously like snatched up. So the reason why Marlo left the money behind, she was being paid off because now her hands aren't clean. That way she can't cleanly walk away from this because they're going to make it seem like, oh, but you took the money. It's like, well, she was kind of forced to take the money, and the whole point was to make it so that with the money, now you have no choice but to play ball, because even if you don't, we're going to say you play ball, so no one's going to believe that you didn't because you had the money. So they're, I mean, they gave her I think that's a little easier than like if they put the money in your bank account. I mean, granted, they probably always could do that later on if they really, really needed to frame you up and force your hand. But typically, the thing would be to put the money in your bank account, but it's a little probably easier just to deal with like the fact is of like, oh, it's a literal physical bag of money. But yeah, so Marlo isn't the bad guy we were kind of thinking she was, which I feel very poetic considering like, hey, we thought Swan was a bad guy, but it was like I figured he wasn't. I figured there was going to be more to this situation because Swan's literally in the same boat as the Paul last season because Paul's in like only 2 episodes. Well, technically 3 episodes because he's in the flashback of episode 6, but he's only in episode 1 and 8. Are the only episodes Paul is in? So I think Swan's gonna be in that same boat because we've seen a bit of him in flashbacks, but we haven't even gotten him technically present day until like maybe the season finale is when we'll get him present day. But everything else, I mean, once again, that's also if he makes it out. He might not for whatever reason. So, but yeah, he everything we've seen with Swan has mainly been in a flashback. To be fair, like every other member of the 110th, we've gotten to know like the 3 that are already dead, like were only in flashbacks as well because they were already dead by then. So that was the jump off point for a lot of stuff anyway. So it's just, it feels like it probably won't play out that way for Swan, but like I said, it's an interesting parallel between Paul and Swan not being here present day type of situation. But anyway, circling back to the Marlowe of it all, I love that she was listing off the people like, oh, like they've got this person. It's like, well, we've already dealt with that person. They've also got this person. Well, we already dealt with that person. This person, they're already dead. It's like listing all the people. But she's like, yeah, there's other plenty of lowlifes that could have come after me. So yeah, that's why I ran. But it's like, don't worry, we're going to draw Langston out using Marlowe as a lure and then kill him and finish this that way to some extent. Once again, there's still, even if Langston's dead, there's still the AM of it all. But that was going to be a future issue. But yeah, they drew him in, and Russo was supposed to be looking after Jane, which he kind of got stuck babysitting, which I even love. Him and Reacher had that like final moment together where it's just like, hey, next when this is all said and done, I'll give you that fight you owe, and I'll let you get the first one. He's like, no, man, I don't want it and I don't need it. He's like, no, I'm sure you actually don't. He's like, no, I don't need the sucker punch to be able to lay your ass out type of thing. So I was like, yeah, you're the only person I can trust, and I need my whole squad with me when we go after Langston. So, but yeah, I guess they were keeping it. Well, that's why I was going back to what I was saying earlier about Marsh. He most likely tipped him off about Russo, and that's why, because even Russo's like, nah, there's no way Marsh would say anything. You know, he wouldn't want any death upon me. It's like, yeah, but you're a loose end that can threaten what he's getting out of this, so it makes him even scummier. If I'm not mistaken, because I think I remember looking at it previously, the actor who plays Marsh, I was like, if I remember correctly, I think I looked on IMDb, I was like, wasn't he in Person of Interest, if I remember correctly? I think I saw some photos, and I was like, oh yeah, because he was like part of the Dirty Cops squad from like, was it season 2? It was like the Dirty Cops? I want to say like, that might have been, I could have sworn that was like season 2 or, well, I don't know, season 3 definitely did. Might have been season 3 did. Because I know there was like a specific season that heavily, like some of the overarching bad guys were like dirty cops. I mean, there was some of that, and I think it's season 3, but I want to say that might have been the season 2 or season 3 storyline. But I was like, oh, like he's played a dirty cop before. Because whatever the case may be, like, he reported this to New Age. He specifically reported it to Langston. So he knew what that meant. And, you know, especially when he made that whole point about, like, oh, I knew who your father was. He was a good cop. But it's like, you don't know my father. You didn't know my father, and you don't know me because you think I'm going to take that bribe and do this. It's like, no, I'm a good cop unlike you. So it's like, yeah, it shows you how much of a garbage piece of shit Marsh is. He knew what that phone call would mean, and he signed Russo's death warrant. So the squad, like, they had to immediately go back to back up Russo. They've got automatics. Like, he's also trying to protect the kid. Like, he can't do all that while dealing with, like, automatic weapons. So it leads to a car chase, and they're trying to meet up with him. Reacher stays behind to deal with Langston because I'm going to put this in there. I was like, at first I was like, oh, is he really going to kill Langston now? I was like, that's interesting because Langston feels like the KJ of this season. It's like, so you're most likely going to, like, deal with that. Like, I would have expected that being the season finale, but I'm like, oh, you deal with that 2 episodes out? Okay. But obviously, in the long run, of course, Langston gets away. The moment they were on the helicopter rolls up, I was like, please tell me that, you know, Reacher gets to, like, kill those guys and then, like, yank Langston off the helicopter when it's high enough. Like, it's like that. He, once again, made it perfectly clear he wants to throw him out of the airplane. He probably will not get that chance. I hope he does, but he probably won't get that chance. I don't know what the scenario is going to be that puts him in that position where he can do that, but we'll see. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. So I also love when Reacher was dealing with those people. He almost pulled a bit of, I feel weird saying pull the Hitman here, because it's like, there's, the wackiness of like Hitman. You could like if you set things up right, you could just like stack up bodies, especially with like, like knock out or kill the same people, a whole bunch of people who might have discovered you in the same room, and you have like a pile of bodies type of thing. Like, he almost had that to some extent, because he starts killing, like, first person he's killed on that bus. Second person he's killed at the bus. Are you going to go for 3 for 3? It's like, nope. He just dragged the other dude under the truck and ended up killing him that way. But yeah, it's just like, right, you strangled this other guy with your bare hands. The other guy, you like at it, like, you kind of put him in a semi-chokehold and killed him. Yeah, who knows what you did to the third guy. And sadly, Langston got away. It's like, because I love, they were like, aren't we going to go after Marlowe's? He's like, no, I want that bit, fucker. It's like, yeah, you do. Running away scared, and it's just like, it's such a shame that he got away. But Russo, on his own, and because I figured how the ending, how it was going to play out when I noticed what the episode's title is. It's called New York's Finest. I was like, no. I was like, yep. Like that, I was like, come on, like, tell me they're going to come through. It's going to seem like maybe he's going to sacrifice himself, but it's like, nah, the moment he's telling her to run, I'm like, he's not going to make it. I was like, damn, that sucks. And in full speed ahead, he's catching all the bullets, and he's running straight forward, shooting. And I was like, damn, dude, going out like a G. And they ran over and like high speed, like ran into the third guy, but... Which is interestingly poetic, because it was kind of similar to the Reacher thing of, well, Reacher killed those two people in the same location kind of in a similar way, and the third guy kind of got dealt with in a little bit different way because he saw the bodies and walked away. This time, Russo took down two of the guys in his, heroic moment, and the others took down the third guy. But by the time they got to Russo, it's like, yeah, he's bleeding out. And there's that moment, and this is where I was talking about with Neely. It seems like she might have I don't know if it's like a germaphobe thing or what it is, but she does not do the touchy feeling. Like, I don't know what that stems from, but also I was like, I kind of picked up on it. Like I said, like certain elements, like it comes up maybe a little bit where you can potentially attribute it to that in season 1, but there's certain things that popped up this season that made me, because she was like, don't touch me. Like, she doesn't like being touched by people. So I thought that was interesting. So she was hesitant to take Russo's hand, so that's why I was like, I don't know what that stems from. Like, I don't know if it's a germaphobe thing or just she just not like human contact, but she breaks like whatever that is just to hold his hand, like, hey, just so you're okay, like, you're okay, I'm here with you, you're not, like, just so you don't have to die alone. And it's like, right, and he made sure he died knowing that the little girl was okay. Like, he was a hero, man. And Reacher's going to really mess Marsh up. Him out of anyone's going to fuck Marsh up, because it's like, you sold Russo out, a good cop died. It feels like they were sunsetting him in that moment, but it could be a thing of maybe they get to the ambulance enough and he has survived. I don't know if that's supposed to be a little poetic, because Finley and Russo, the two main cops he was working with last season, survived. I mean, one was a love interest, but also one was kind of his frenemy, who was also his frenemy. Who was his frenemy this season? Russo. So I don't know. Once again, I don't know how one-to-one these are with their book. This adaptation, I've never read the book, so I don't know how close it is to the book. So if there's a Russo equivalency, if it's a direct Russo in the book, and did he die? Was there equivalency to Russo in the book that died? Or, because they make original characters for when they adapt stuff. So I don't know if what category he falls into that boat. But it's like, was this like, he dies in that character dies in the book as well, or is that just something different to show, just to make it so like, well, Finley and Roscoe survived season 1, gotta make it there to be, weight to it, like deaths that do matter. So it's like, gotta hit it close to home. I mean, to be fair, it was already pretty close to home, considering like all the people close to Reacher, like a good chunk of their team is dead now, and so the person they were getting close to, the cop they were investigating, the good guy that was in this situation, is dead, sadly. So potentially, like I said, the way they would kind of focus on it seemed like his eyes were still open, but like he had died. So I think he is dead. Obviously, we'll get a confirmation in the next episode, but if I'm kind of leaning like at least 90% sure that he's dead. Now, if he turns out to be okay, I'll be like, hey, I'm a-okie dokie with that, him being alive, but it just feels like he's most likely dead. So, but next episode will fully confirm it. It's just speculation at this point. Felt pretty definitive, but I'm still leaving up a little hope. I'm like, no, maybe not. Because I am that type of person that's in denial until the show's like, no, you idiot, it just definitely died. He definitely died. He's dead. So, it's going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us. Second to last episode of the season. I'd assume this is only 8 episodes. I don't remember if I looked it up, but I'm assuming it's going to be 8 episodes like the first season. But yeah, I'm excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us. Going forward with all of this, what's going to happen with Langston? Now he's got to be backed into a corner. What's going to happen with AM, because he's on his way to pick up the devices. There was a whole conversation about how long will it take. You know, obviously an engineer can teach him how to do it, and he'll be able, I'm curious, is he going to potentially portray Langston and them and end up killing him? I'm sure that would be bad for business. There's a lot of loose ends. That's mainly Langston and them handling the loose ends, but we see that AM's the type to kind of deal with loose ends as well. So we'll see how that all transpires and how that all plays out next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.